What's up, everyone? Today's guest, Sonny Chadha, is someone who has extensive experience in the world of sales and marketing, having worked for some of the biggest brands out there like UPS, DHL, and HoneyWell. He also founded his own company back in 2016 called Sassy Eyes, which operates in the space of eye health and retail. We sit down and talk about some of the most important sales and marketing strategies, and generally speaking, how can your business uplift its customer acquisition capability. We're live.
Okay.
This is Sonny. How are you?
Good. Thanks, Brownie. Yourself?
Good to have you, man.
Thank you very much. Looking forward to it.
I'm very pleased to have you in here, and I think we'll have a lot of things to talk about.
Exciting times ahead.
You have a lot of experience in obviously sales and marketing by virtue of all the work and positions, and even also you had a business that you were running until as of recent.
Yes.
So I think we'll have a lot of things to cover today.
Yeah. Look, and as we go into 2021, I think there's a lot of companies are now looking towards growth.
Yep.
They're getting used to this new way of being normal, and they're trying to find ways. Okay, so this is how we have to do business. We don't stop doing business, but how can we work with it to grow? So there's a lot of plans coming out for 2021 around where that growth will be and how do we execute our growth plans there.
Yeah, it's like you said, at some point people just accepted, where everything went and how things have unfolded over the last few months, since the recession has kicked in. And everyone is like, okay, well, how do we now look at growing, regardless of what's happening and, what can happen? Let's just focus on, how do we live with the pandemic or virus or whatever you call it. And there's been a lot of amazing stories of companies that quadrupled in growth. Obviously online e-commerce has been crazy, and a lot of tech companies like Zoom and a lot of other companies did really, really well. So where do we start?
No, there are certain pockets that have done exceptional. I mean, even during the recession of the 1920s and 30s, late 29 and 30s, some companies did do extremely well. Obviously, this is slightly different. This was a forced recession as such because of a pandemic. But I think initially there was a big shock.
Yeah,
people were afraid on how to deal with it. Everyone sort of just shut their doors and just contain themselves and their businesses. But now I think they're looking at, okay, got to go on with life. Life doesn't stop here. And also with the talk of vaccines coming out next year, so that looks positive as well. Obviously, it'll take a while for the logistics of that to happen. I mean, you got to produce, you got to store, you got to transport, in certain temperature controlled environments. You got to then get it to a port like Sydney, and then into warehouses across Sydney, and then into the hands of doctors or whoever's going to give those vaccines out, and then you got to give it to the community. So it'll be a very big exercise to do to get the world immunized against, or at least Australia immunized against it, actually.
Yeah, I think when you look at businesses and how they get affected and impacted by events like that, it's quite interesting because doesn't impact every single business. Also by the nature of what the business is in and the industry and what they do and the products and whatnot, it impacts businesses in different ways. So for example, if you were a cafe or a bar, you got really hit big time. But if you were an online store that was focusing primarily on selling online, you wouldn't have been impacted the same way, right? But the point I have around getting impacted by recessions or something like a pandemic is, yes, it impacts businesses in different ways, and you might not be impacted, or you might be impacted more, but there are also lessons learned from businesses that were able, through being agile and responsive, to mitigate a lot of the risk. And the example I have is IKEA. I read an article a couple of weeks ago about how they were forced to shut down 75% of their stores. And previous to the pandemic, they didn't have a big focus on online.
Yes,
You know,
correct.
because part of their strategy is to have you come into the store,
Yes.
do the whole walk,
Yes.
you know,
It's a cost
and
saving for them.
yeah, and they have like this little, you know, journey. So you go from this partition going into the kitchen area to, you
Yes.
know, the bedroom, all that stuff. And as you go, you keep buying and buying and buying. And so they had to react really, really fast, and they were able to mitigate a lot of the losses they incurred by shutting down these stores. So I think a big part of business growth comes down to how quickly you can respond to external events.
Yes. I think there was a big growth in online prior to the pandemic anyway.
Mm,
With the pandemic, it's certainly, if you weren't in it by then, you
mm,
had to jump on it quick. If you
mm,
didn't, your business basically is gone.
yeah.
And the companies that were on it have grown even more.
Mm,
So it's something that you had to jump on
yeah.
very quickly.
So shall we perhaps go a little bit into your journey maybe over the last 5 years, and we can start from there to talk a little bit about your insights and how businesses can grow, and how can, you know, sales and marketing work together, and, you know, talk a bit about maybe a few strategies and things like that.
Sure, by all means.
So you, I guess, what did you do over the last 5 years? I know you also had a business that you started and sold.
Yes.
But prior to that, you also worked for a few big names.
Yeah. Look, I left school, a uni that is. I picked up a grad program.
Yep.
With Energy Australia, actually, going back, and then went to 3M.
Yep.
And Telstra and Optus.
Yep.
For a bit, and then moved over to the UK.
Yep.
And worked with a company called DHL, which was
Logistics.
Yeah, and I didn't have any aspirations or desire to end up in logistics.
Mm.
It just sort of happened.
Yep.
That makes sense. And it's funny because I think as a person and in your own career, you grow when you're outside your comfort zone, and that's
Yep.
very true, because that role was way outside my comfort zone, and it's the role where I grew the most.
Yep.
And where I have enjoyed it the most as well,
Yep.
because you're able to do a lot of things that are new,
Mm.
and pick up new skills.
Yep.
And then once you sort of conquer those,
Yep.
or at least deliver on your KPIs, you really enjoy it.
Yep.
You feel great. You get rewarded with a nice, healthy bonus too, which is nice.
Of course.
And then from there, came back. Actually, there was the GFC.
Yep.
Then hit. Moved back with DHL here to their domestic business, which was a joint venture between DHL and New Zealand Post. That got sold off, and then moved to UPS with Asia. Did a couple of sales and marketing roles in Asia.
Yep.
with UPS, and then as a family, we decided to move back here to Australia after a few years from Singapore. My wife we decided actually what we would do our own business.
Yep.
To provide us another additional revenue stream, but have some independence from the corporate work for a while, and see, because
how that plays out.
Yeah, because you spend so much time providing these expertise skills that you have towards companies. Why can't you provide it for yourself?
Yep.
So I got a business started from scratch, and then I picked up a role with Tate Communications, and then I went into HoneyWell as the business was building up. So in the evenings I was doing a few hours at night, and on the
#hustler,
and one tag on, and one day on the weekend you spend
Right.
some time doing, a lot of tasks you would do yourself because
Yep.
you're trying to save costs.
Yep.
And we had the kids get involved occasionally to help. Then we had someone who wanted to buy. This is just before the pandemic hit.
Right.
We had someone that wanted to actually buy it, and then with the pandemic, things slowed down. That original deal fell through, but we did get somebody to buy the business, which happened just a couple of months ago.
Congratulations.
So yeah, thanks. So
well done.
So we've now obviously moved that business on, and now coming to 2021, looking at now the new normal now, which is very different and very exciting though as well. And it's how employees can now adapt to the new normal, the new way of doing business. For example, with sales, you don't, very hard to meet someone. If you've got an APAC role, how do you meet someone in Malaysia or in China to sell? You got to do it via email, via Zoom, via Skype, via Teams or Google Classrooms. But you got those other means to do it now. So it's employees that can adapt to the new form of working. It becomes very difficult now.
Can I just ask you to bring this a little bit this way? Yeah, perfect. I definitely. Do you think that this new norm, because that's the idea I've been kind of toying with lately, whether this is just a transition period or this is just a temporary period and everything is going to go back to the way they were? Because deep down, a lot of people are wanting to think that this is what's going to happen. But then there are some realistic or some realists who think that, or maybe pessimistic, depends on how you see it, that things will never be the same. And so I don't know. I feel like definitely adaptation and adapting is the name of the game right now. But do you also see that it's just temporary?
You have to adapt. I think we've done quite a big change. It'll come back a bit. It'll come back. How much comes back is a debate. But I think there'll be a mixture. I think a lot of companies who were against people working from home were forced to do it now. So it's been proven that it can work, and you can have a better balance between a better life-work balance as well. So that's helped it. So it'll certainly come back. But I think a lot of people, including myself, I know a lot of old colleagues of mine and have said, I miss going into the office. I need to have a few days a week in the office. One, to share ideas, because you can't just walk by someone's office and say, Rani, I just a quick one for you, because you're sitting in your house. You're going to ring up someone and say, I've got a quick one for you. You can't go and grab a coffee with someone. I think I just want to run this idea past you. So a lot of that I think has stopped, and people miss that, and that interaction with people. But the alone time at home means less distractions, which means you can sort of get your head into a report or a Excel spreadsheet or a PowerPoint, and you can really sort of go through it properly without being disturbed, which is a plus.
That's a really interesting point. Like, for example, to illustrate what you just said, this what's happening right now, us talking, is a brainstorming session in and of itself. Like, I'm talking, you're talking, we're sharing ideas, and they're building on top of each other.
Yes.
So eventually we get to this place where, we find some meaningful insights and conclusions. You might not necessarily get that with, being, working from home and not seeing your colleagues and sitting, I guess you can still do it remotely via, obviously, Zoom and Skype and whatever, but there's something about physical presence that brings a lot
interactions.
of interactions.
After all, being humans, we want that interaction.
Yeah.
You want to see someone's hand signals or something, or their gestures, whether they think the idea is good or bad. On Zoom, they can sit on their hands and you'll never know whether they sort of think it's a good idea or a bad idea. But when you're sitting across from you, if I put forward an idea, you like it, your gestures will be different. I think, okay, I'm on the right track. So you need to have, I think, moving forward, there'll be a balance.
And when you look at sales, for example, if let's say it's a B2b context and, I'm promoting, I'm selling to you, for example, a software that you guys can use in your company to do X, Y, and Z. Um, Sitting in front of you to talk to you about something, trust is super important when it comes to sales, right? Especially in the B2B space or across the board. And, there's nothing, I shouldn't say there's nothing, but sitting in front of someone and seeing them and interacting with them and being in proximity helps tremendously when it comes to building trust.
It does. And it's easier to articulate something as well.
Mm,
Because a simple sketch, for
yeah.
example, you can draw a quick diagram as I'm sitting in front of you on
Mm,
Zoom. It just wouldn't happen.
mm,
So that's a crucial part
mm,
where a lot of sales guys have lost their roles. They're not meeting their numbers because it's tough
mm,
at the moment, and we're working in ways around it. And the smart employees are finding ways around it,
mm.
and they're getting to it a lot quicker than others. In some industries, it's obviously different,
Mm.
so it does vary by industry.
Yeah, well, survival is product of adaptation, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I would say so. I would say one thing though. I would suspect, I don't have any data is yet to back this up, but if you've got a current relationship with a customer
Mm.
or have had in the past, it'd be easier to maintain that customer
Yep.
than to find a new one in the
Yep.
current environment. So I don't have those data at the moment, but I would envisage a lot of plans in place to retain and grow existing B2B customers.
So I used to think about this quite a lot as well. Back in the day when I was more in sales operations, working for a few companies, the idea of where an organization should focus, or as a business in general, should put more eggs in new business development or customer retention. Right? It's a very interesting thing. Like, obviously, everyone wants more business
Yes.
and want to keep the customers,
Yes.
but a lot of times you have to decide whether you want to invest or focus a little bit more, because no matter what business you're in and what organization, size you have, there's always going to be some limitation on the resources that you have, right?
Always the case.
Always.
Always the case.
So when you have a limited resource, be it human resources, money, whatever, you're going to have to decide on where you focus on. So the idea of, okay, do we focus on retention? Let's give a priority to keeping the customers that we have and servicing them, or do we go after new business?
Look, look, you can only grow the business in three ways. One, you bring on new customers, so you're selling more to new customers. You have your current customers and you sell more to them. So rather than selling them 5 widgets, you sell them 10.
Yep.
Or you have your current customers, and with those 5 widgets, you increase the price or increase the value of those 5 to increase the revenue. So you only got three ways to do it. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, when it comes, when you boil it down,
it's as simple as that. So it's where you think you can maximize those returns. So I mentioned that in the current pandemic, a lot of businesses are focusing more on because it's hard to sell. To get someone to switch companies now, particularly in a complex sale, it can be quite difficult. So because you don't have that trust sitting in front of someone, so you have this push for retaining and growing current business. However, it depends on your industry, where you are within your industry. Like if you've got a large chunk of the industry, like 50%, growing to new customers can be tough. You want to make sure that no one pinches your current customer base. So you don't have a hole in the bucket where you keep adding in new customers and you keep dropping out new customers, because you're wasting money essentially on marketing to new customers. And also it depends on what you want to do. If you're a challenger brand, well, then you need to grow market share. And to grow market share, you got to pinch from your competitors. And growing the market is what all your competitors would do as well. And in certain industries, like with Zoom, that industry is growing. So you can grow the industry as opposed to pinching as much market share from others.
Interesting.
But essentially, if you want to bring on new customers, you got to pinch market share. So it depends on your product, where you are within the market, and where you see your growth coming from. So it's not a simple black and white.
Yeah, and it also comes down to return on investment. So if you look and you see, okay, we're spending X amount of dollars on new business development initiatives to bring new customers, and we know that on average the customer lifetime value is X. Because on average we can retain a customer or upsell to the customer, for that long and that much worth of money. And then you compare that to, okay, well, if we invest a little bit less and put this money into customer retention, and also, so we increase the lifetime span and the value of the customer,
Yes.
but also upsell to them, what is the return that we get
Yes.
from this incremental investment?
Correct.
So a lot of it also come down to looking at your data and
you got to know where that growth will come from, and which initiatives you'd use to execute those plans to get to that growth. So it's very much dependent upon the industry and where you are as a business and what your goal is.
Yeah. The golden question. Ready?
Sure, shoot.
The sales and marketing. What you believe their roles are and how they play in together, and it's going to be a very open-ended question, and how that varies in different sectors. What are the ways sales and marketing functions can be super aligned and productive working together? We've heard and seen a lot of changes in big corporations where they remove CMOs and they make the sales and marketing function one department or one department or organization within the larger organization, or is it KPIs? What are your thoughts on that?
Look, I've worked across 3 different regions in the world now, and a few different industries, and one common factor is there for growth. For a company to have growth, both sales and marketing have to be intertwined and working together. That's the bottom line. And unless that happens, you're not going to get real tangible growth. You're not going to provide value to your customers. It comes down to sales and marketing being on the same plan, building that plan together. And if you often have a head of sales and a head of marketing who aren't on the same page, and that could be for historical reasons in a company, it could be for personal reasons amongst themselves, they just don't get along as well as what they should. It causes friction between the sales and marketing functions, and that can often happen. And small teething things can cause delays, right? I've found that if you can, in some cases, some industries, when you combine the sales and marketing, you'll find that the accountability sits with the one person for growth. So sales can't do this and marketing can't do that. When the CEO points the question, where's our growth? It sits on one person's shoulders, and then because the one person has responsibility for both, they can pull the levers accordingly. And even move some of the KPIs internally to capture the goal, whether you want to quickly turn from looking at new customers to retention of current customers. There was an example where in the UK, when I was with DHL, we were growing this whole e-commerce network. So is at the embryonic stages of the first mile and last mile for logistics. And because I had that luxury, I was able to, for the first 6 months, focus the sales guys on doing new business, so acquiring new service point locations. When in the second half, it was more about, okay, let's maximize the sales we can get from the existing ones. So I think there is a benefit, depending on the industry and the type of business, on having those functions aligned a lot more closely. And the closer they are aligned, the better it is.
I think in organizations where you can't have, like you said, sales and marketing under one roof with one person being accountable, one of the things that you can do is really have a deep look at the KPIs that are driving
Yes.
performance of both. Because I worked for companies where the KPIs were not necessarily driving the right outcomes, and kind of led to pointing fingers, for the lack of a better term. So I think KPIs can be one way to do it, but ideally having it under one roof is what, from I've seen over the last few years, is probably the best practice, in my opinion.
You can share some of the KPIs. That does help as well. If you're hesitant to put them both together, sharing some of the KPIs can help, because then automatically by default you're both working, or both functions are working on a common KPI. So if you're sharing profit, or if you're sharing new business growth, if you're sharing return on investments, you're both automatically must align to that. So you'll do what's best for the business to get, or best for the KPI to get it, and therefore you're both working together. But yeah, it's not a black and white answer. It's quite unique to the business, and also to the personalities as well. In some businesses, look, it's best to keep them separate. I spent some time looking at domestic transport. And in that scenario, it was good to have it separate, sales and marketing. Because pricing in logistics, because of the utilization, if you don't use it, you lose it in terms of space. Pricing sat with marketing. If you sat with sales, everything will get approved. And you sell it really cheap just to get the volume up,
of course,
which doesn't help. And then if you gave it to finance would approve nothing, or they approve very little, because for finance they're worried about the cost, and they don't care about the top line revenue as much.
We love all the finance folks, so don't take it the wrong way.
No,
you definitely are showstoppers sometimes.
So no, but they're looking at I mean, their KPIs are around managing the cost, and the growth to a certain of the business, making sure it navigates through those times. So pricing sat within marketing. So I think in that scenario, it worked out well to have marketing separate from sales, but share some common KPIs. So marketing shared profit with finance, and we also shared revenue with sales. So it was a balanced approach.
So if I'm a B2B startup, if I'm a startup in the B2B space, what are the things that, from your experience, you think, and what's been happening over the last few months, from an economic standpoint, and whether it's ease or difficulty of breaking into the Australian market or the global market, what are the things that you personally believe a startup should focus on, whether in sales or marketing or both?
You would need to know. I think it comes down to, at the very first phase, is what is the problem you're trying to solve for a customer? Right. So you must have an idea of what you want to do. Okay, so what is the problem within that industry, the broader? What is that the customer wants different from what they currently get? Or can you provide the service better than somebody else can currently do? And generally you can't, because you're a startup. So you need a lot of initial investment costs. Once up and running, because you're smaller, you might be more nimble, so you can provide it. But initially, what can you provide to a customer that solves a pain point for them? So as a customer, you would have an issue or that just annoys you. Now, I want to solve that. So then, okay, that's their issue. Now, what product can I do, and what solution do I provide with that? So this is the product, which the customer does not care about. They care about the solution. So make sure then that you have a solution that targets that issue, and then look at how you would position that within the marketplace. Who would be your first 10, 15, 20 customers that you could target straight away? Because you need to have the revenue, let's face it. The costs don't stop. but
Yep.
the revenue can. So,
Yeah.
have that list of customers and keep growing that list of customers, because you're going to be trying to pinch market share away. But it comes down to solving a solution, an issue for a customer by having a solution, not having a product.
Yeah.
And a lot of people get stuck on that. They just say, "I've got this great product." So what?
Yep.
Like,
Do people need it?
Yeah. Okay. How will that help me? It'll save you man hours or person hours by the data entry. You'll have a cost saving. Now that's, to me, the company, that could be $100 a week. Times it by 2 or 3 staff over 12 months. That's a lot of money. So already you're starting to provide a solution for that customer.
In the B2B space, almost always whatever you're selling has to be translated into some form of money, right? Like, what am I selling you, and how is that going to put money in your organization, whether it's by helping you sell more, cost save, or
Yes.
brand equity, whatever, right? How can we translate that? But I think you're right with, problem solving. When you look at creating a business and developing a product, it's all about what problem can I solve, or am I solving? But then the next question becomes, well, is that problem a legitimate problem? Do people actually face that problem, or is it just, what's the magnitude? How many people actually have that problem? Or do I just think that it is a problem and it's not really as big as I think it is? And if it is, the next question becomes, well, how can the existing market players who might not be in that space, but maybe in a similar, or in an industry that overlaps, who might look at this and say, okay, well, and because they have resources, they're established, bigger companies, they can right away develop a product that competes with what I'm doing. So it also becomes about how easy it is to replicate that product and bring it to the market.
Yes. If you perceive an issue in the marketplace and you go and try and resolve it, you won't be in the market for long. You might get some quick sales up, but you'll be found out pretty quick. You need to find out what the core issue is, and then you can have more of a sustainable business, at least for a period of time, while that issue exists. But then you'll have competitors coming into the market and trying to provide it faster, cheaper, better than what you can. So you got to be up with the game. A lot of companies think that a bigger company can do it faster, but I don't think so. They have access to funds to do it faster.
Yep.
But their ability to provide the solution quicker, I think, is sometimes held up by their own internal approvals.
Yep.
To get something you got to
bureaucracy.
Go through. Well, no, but they're in place for a reason.
Yep.
Right. But it just happens that because they're bigger, they have more.
Of course.
And they have to go through those right channels to make sure. And bearing in mind, you might call it bureaucracy, but those checkpoints, if done correctly, also diminish the risk of it not succeeding as well.
Of course.
Which is a very valuable point. Where in a smaller business, you don't have that. So you might be able to go to the market faster.
Yep.
But you could also lose it a lot faster as well. So it's not as sustained.
Totally different mindsets, right? A bigger company is more focused on protecting what they have.
Yes.
So they have all these things in place.
Yes.
To make sure that whatever the new initiatives are, they're not going to damage the brand, they're not going to damage the business.
Correct.
Whereas if you're a small business, your mindset is all about risk-taking, growth, trying to do new things.
Yeah, and as you grow as a small company, you employ people, those checks and balances will automatically start to come into it. It depends now on how much you want those in there or not, and how flat your structure is. But yes, it will happen if you thankfully can grow that big.
Yeah. Going back to marketing in the B2B space, do you believe content marketing is one of the, if not the most important thing that a marketing function should focus on in the B2B space? Are there other things that should come above it, next to it?
Content marketing, you said.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look, it's a fair question that's been raised many times before as well. So it's very hard to make a generic rule because each company is different.
Right.
And they're in different phases,
Yep.
different investments, different growth phases too, right? And different product life cycles. But generally speaking, B2B, because the world we get a lot more data.
Yeah.
So we can be a lot more smarter.
Mm.
We can, for example, segment our customer base or the market into different verticals, for argument's sake. And then we can target those customers or those potential customers within that market with EDMs or campaigns or trade show, whatever you want to do. But then you can target it with the right content marketing by having, for example, a story about if you're doing mining, someone who's in the mining industry and what problems they face and the solutions that you have. So we can be a lot smarter with it, and a lot of companies are becoming a lot smarter with it by having a more of a tailored content approach, and that's been possible with this whole digitization. So it has become a lot more cost effective from that perspective. So you've seen a lot of money go off from above the line and move into below the line, and a fair chunk of that's gone into this whole tailored content marketing.
Which kind of overlaps with the whole funnel building exercise, right? So how do you take people from just seeing one content piece or seeing an ad to perhaps becoming a lead, submitting an inquiry, to, especially in B2B, you have a much longer sales cycle.
Yes.
And depending on the type of the business, that could be, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks to 2 years sometimes, depending on, if you're selling something to the CIA, I guess. What was it? AWS just sold to Amazon Web Services. They just sold to Jeff Bezos did a deal with either CIA or the American government that was in the billions, like a couple of billions. I wonder how long that took. Maybe that took 2 days. That would be crazy. But yeah, so being able to understand, and I was actually writing a blog piece about that yesterday, understand using a different set of marketing technologies and tools, how people interact with the content and, what you serve them with, even if it's an ad or anything else, and to understand not just from a demographic standpoint, if you're a B2C and you're selling, I don't know, gifts, and you have different geographies that you're targeting, different demographics, different age groups, etc., you might go and say, okay, well, I want to be looking at, I want to have emails that go to people who are from, this age group to that age group, who are males, for example, and serve them with, these, because these are the products that they would be interested in. But then there's a whole different ball game in understanding how people interact with your content, and from clicking to visiting a specific page,
how long on the page for,
how long,
will they get stuck,
exactly, all these things, and what inquiry form they submitted. There's hundreds, if not thousands, of things that you can look at to feed these signals to your marketing team, but also your sales team, to be able to have better conversations with your prospective customers.
The first thing is, you can only target those geographies or those groups if you have the right information coming in. So you need to obviously have an initiative in place where you can collate person's name, age, address, or business address, or home address, depending on B2B or B2C, age group, etc. So you can't do any of the EDMs or the campaigns you want to get done without having that information first. Whether you do it by EDMs or by Facebook, LinkedIn, you need to have that first, and only then you can be smarter with your outputs. And I would say one thing: a lot of the smarter companies, particularly in Australia, with the quite strict rules around unsubscribing from emails.
Privacy.
You have to. You want to be very sure you don't lose those customers by unsubscribing, them choosing to unsubscribe from your EDM. So your content has to be relevant, timely, and very much informative to what they want.
Yep.
Because they can opt out tomorrow.
Of course.
And that list is very hard to get.
Yeah. I mean, let's say, we're friends and, we meet up every couple of weeks to catch up, over a beer or whatever. And I know you're not a fan of soccer, for example.
Yep.
Yeah, every single time I sit with you, I'm like, hey, man, did you watch that last game, Liverpool, blah, blah, blah? You're going to stop want to talk to me, right? You're not going to want to hang out anymore. And so you take that same very simple concept and apply it in, your content marketing. You have to understand what people care about and what people are interested in. And obviously, because not all your content is going to be directly about what you're selling. And so a substantial portion is going to be about things, especially if you're at the top of the funnel, things that are interesting to your audience.
Yes, correct.
Away from your particular product. So understanding what people like and not like and what they are interested in is absolutely imperative.
So so as I said to you, you got to know what those issues are within the customer or within that industry. So a certain industry, if you're doing like a B2b solution sale, that industry and a vertical within that industry would have a couple of main pain points that they're trying to solve, right? And that's where you can provide tailored content about industry updates to that customer who's on that mailing list, because you've got the right data coming in. You've got your Salesforce Marketo list that you can use to segment that up. And then you can start to look at content from globally within your company, within your partners or other stories that's relevant towards them. And you're starting to build that relationship with that customer. And then obviously that's at the top of the funnel. They start to get intrigued. They might click on a story. So bang, you've got them. This person's interested in this story. You might ring them a bit further saying, because they've got a problem in this area. We know this problem's worth X million dollars a year. We have a solution for this. You might want to warm the lead up before you give it to the salesperson, or the salesperson may wish to do it themselves. But you're starting to provide informative information that gets their interest in before you. And look, if your EDM is just about your products, it ain't going to work. It's just not going to work. Don't even waste your time.
It's got to be value adding, educational.
Yes, informative. Yes, correct. And they got to find how it relates to them, and you should be able to join those dots for them. You should be that smart in your business that you know what their issue is, and you know how to provide a story where the dots can be joined. Correct.
Yeah. So draw that connection between the pain that you got and why my product is the right solution.
Correct. And don't ever say I've got the right solution for you.
It's exactly, I was just about to say, and it's never like saying it like that. It's never.
Correct.
Sometimes it can be a little bit less direct. Sometimes it has to be a lot less direct.
Yes.
Depending on the nature of the business. But it's never like, hey, I got the right solution for you. I want to buy it.
But particularly for a B2B sale, because it's a transactional sale for B2C, that's pretty quick, right? You can make a decision on the spot. But when you're talking about something that's worth $1 million, well, no, you can't.
I love B2B. I love B2B marketing. I'm in B2b and B2c, and I always try to think of how different they are.
They are. I think B2B can be a bit more fun. I think you got a bit more latitude. That makes sense. It's B2C. It's you do a lot more fun things at a social level, but in terms of within marketing and sales, and your latitude within those is a bit broader, if that makes sense. But your social aspect of B2C is a lot more visible and fun, obviously.
Yeah.
But you'll find that principles can be quite similar, but your execution pieces have to be very different on winning business. So yeah,
we never mentioned what B2C and B2b is. I'm sure a lot of whoever's watching already know, but for anyone who doesn't know, B2C, business to consumer, sometimes it's referred to as D2C, direct to consumer.
yes.
So that's an example that is e-commerce. So you're selling to a person, an individual. B2b is business to business. So do you have any thoughts on how you see the marketing or even sales of both space evolving, whether from a technology standpoint or from practices standpoint in the next couple of years, whether here in Australia, around the world? Any thoughts about how you see this space going?
Before the pandemic, there was a bit of graying
Mm.
between the B2B and B2C space. The pandemic has accelerated that, and,
Yep.
I think that will continue to accelerate, where companies who are traditionally B2B are looking at B2C or B2B2C through a retail partner or through a third party somehow.
Yep.
But they're looking at ways to hit the consumer directly, and then internally you have your different ways to go to market,
Sure.
and then different cost measures to get to that market, and so therefore different price offerings and different solutions as well. So I think it'll grow in that space. Yes.
Amazing. Is there anything that you think we haven't covered that we should have?
Around growth, and look, I think the main thing to understand is customers first.
Yeah.
I think we get so hell bent on internally, you get stuck on marketing plans or sales plans or growth plans and execution of this, your SEOs. We often forget about the customer. We often forget what are we providing for the customer that will force them to choose you over somebody else. I think because we get put in the regular day-to-day work, we often forget that. And I think that's one of the biggest things. And don't think that you've got to find out what it is.
Yeah.
Because assumption can lead you down the wrong path as well. So, spend some time, if you're in a large corporate or a medium-sized business, spend some time out on the road. Go and talk to the customers. When I was with DHL and UPS, I'd spend a lot of time with our drivers, for example. One day a month, I would tell the team as well, go out on the road one day a month, listen to the drivers, hear what they have to say. You'll be surprised at what you can learn about the market and the customers, and also about our products, and where you can tweak those slightly. Price points, trade lanes, all this information is valuable, as well as with marketing people to go out with salespeople too, to understand with a salesperson how hard it is for them to close a deal. Everyone thinks it's simple, but it is a very tough ask to do, because you're getting bombarded with information from your company about the different products, how they benefit, and if you've got a large business, you're cross-selling and upselling, and then you're going out to a customer who's got a very specific issue. You've got to take that noise out and look at what their solution is, and then you've got to sell them that. So, and then you should go out there and listen to what the customer says is bad about you. So, because often a salesperson will come in and say, "Oh, they said that we're too expensive," for argument's sake. That's the most common thing. And then everyone in house goes, "Oh, you guys all."
Marketing always takes it as an excuse, or
sales. Yeah, everyone says, sales always say that, right?
Yeah.
But you bring that back in, and if you can get that from 3 or 4 different customers about a certain area or product or your offering, then you know what? You've got some real intelligence around a certain part of your service that is not priced right. You can go back into it and look at it. Why are we not as competitive in that product or service offering? What can we do to reduce our costs? Or are our costs allocated correctly? So go on the call to finance and ask them to relook at it, or then find ways to reduce costs.
Or maybe you haven't conveyed enough from a marketing perspective the real value of the product.
Correct. But I'm talking about coming back in.
Okay.
Coming back into our business. So you start to support sales.
Yeah.
Because you're working closely with. Remember, I said to you, you work closely together. So all of a sudden, sales start to see marketing working closely together.
Yeah.
Like, okay, these guys have taken my 4 points about we're too expensive on board. They're looking at it.
Yeah.
Right. Yes, you got to articulate the value to you provide to the customer, saying, look, we're providing you, data entry saving, cost saving there. We're moving your product a lot quicker or faster, and that is a saving to them and revenue to them. The other side of it, by going out with sales for all marketing people, is you will also learn the first few minutes. The customer will just bombard you with how bad you are.
Yeah.
Take it on board. Take it, and see if you hear it 2 or 3 or 4 times. But at the same time, you'll also hear after that 10 minutes
good things,
what you do well.
Yep.
Right? We often forget about the good things that we do. We're doing if you've got a business that's selling $100 million a year, well, guess what? You're doing something right.
Yeah.
What are those good things that you're doing?
Yep.
Right? Take them back in.
Yeah.
Make them more louder in your campaigns, in your cloud, because that's your competitive advantage.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So it and that also shows with sales that you're working with them to help them sell.
Brilliant. That's couldn't agree more.
Simple, right?
Yeah, quite simple. Let's just go and execute it.
Yes, right. It's very, very hard out there because there's so many different things at play.
Yeah,
that you get sidetracked, left, right, different priorities, staff issues.
Yeah,
budget constraints. Money hasn't come in. You got to cut your budget by half. Or
all
the fun things.
For all the startup founders listening, these are things you probably have to deal with a little bit down the road. It has been an eventful almost an hour. So closing in on a 60-minute. It's been amazing. Thank you so much. I think we unpacked a few interesting ideas and topics. I'm sure everyone who's listening definitely would have definitely taken a lot of value from it. I certainly appreciate your time, and thank you for coming.
That's good. Hopefully some people can learn. It'll helps out some companies, particularly the smaller ones who don't have that expertise in-house.
Yeah.
They're doing it tough. I've been one of them, and it is hard because you're often alone and question yourself.
Of course.
Like I remember at night, I questioned myself 10 times over a decision I was about to make in the morning, where in a large corporate, you'd pass it on to a couple of people. You get your sanity check that it's correct. So yeah, I think it applies to a lot of the smaller businesses who are trying to come out of this pandemic.
Make a dent in the world. Questioning yourself is very interesting. Hey, it's something that you have to do, but where do you draw the line? Because too much of it can be self-sabotage, right?
God, it comes down to the individual. I mean,
you're like, don't even take me there.
I mean, I was doing it relentlessly because it's your money. You got skin in the game as such, right? When you're working for someone, you don't, right? So you are, and you've got, X amount of dollars to spend. You want to make sure that every single dollar is used, 1.5 times, right? If not once at least on return. So you're really questioning everything over, and you're double checking things, triple checking everything. It's because it's something that I think probably as you get a bit more seasoned and you grow, you probably get a bit more relaxed, and probably you bring on people on board. But we were lucky enough to sell our business, so that was certainly a positive.
Maybe that should be another episode where we talk about knowing when to sell a business.
Yeah, actually true. That's actually true, because look, it's timing is critical.
Mm,
Um, and look, sometimes it comes out of the blue. You know,
mm,
we weren't planning on it,
mm,
and all of a sudden we getting a bit of interest.
mm,
So then I spent some time, a few months, in building it up
mm.
even more to get the price a bit higher,
Yeah.
because obviously we wanted to show more help. EBIT.
Profit margin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Correct. Yeah. So our EBIT. So timing is critical.
Mm,
But sometimes it comes out of the blue where it wasn't a plan, but it's happened.
yeah.
So no, look, it's. I
Well,
must admit, I would not change the experience I
mm,
had.
yeah.
You know, it was crazy hours,
Mm,
a lot of stress,
yeah.
a lot of fun
Mm,
as well, like learning fun. Like what I learned, and I see what I had learned in my career, and then executing in your own business, you know, and then now going back into the corporate world. It's such an amazing experience to have.
mm.
It really gets you
It's an eye opener.
very focused on
Mm,
what you need to do,
mm,
and where that where your time was best spent for
mm,
that period of time, and then moving on to the next thing,
mm.
and looking at growth, because you're always looking at growth, and that's the biggest factor.
I think one of the things that when you start a business, whether it succeeds or fails, hopefully it succeeds, is that when it's all said and done, you never look back at it and say, "Oh, that was a waste of time." There's a lot of lessons that you learn. You know, the journey, the fun that you said, you're talking about. There's a lot of things that when you are an entrepreneur who starts something and grows it, that journey, be it 5 years or 10 years or whatever, very tough to say, it was a waste of time. Even if you didn't make a lot of money, there were a lot of lessons.
Well,
that
I don't think I met anyone that's has said it's been a waste of time.
Yep.
I think everyone said, you know, I really enjoyed it.
Mm,
Some people said I made a lot out of it.
yeah.
Some people have made like a load of
Yeah.
money. Some people haven't. But they said, look, we didn't make as much as we wanted to, but geez, I enjoyed it. Like I
Mm,
learned so much
yep.
about the business world, but
Mm,
also about myself.
yep.
Because you also learn what your limitations are,
Mm,
and you'd be surprised how resourceful
mm,
that you can be as an individual to learn something new and different.
mm,
Because you won't have a compliance officer working
mm,
for you. You got to make sure you tick all the compliance. Like if you're in a certain industry,
mm.
in allied health or something, you got to make sure that you've got all those compliance ticks and measured off, right?
100%.
So you'll be surprised
You
how
pick
much,
up a lot of new skills for
how
sure.
far you can be stretched.
Mm,
It's the human brain. We don't we're fearful of using it, but
mm.
it's just fantastic. It's
That can be another episode. Well, it's
yes,
been a pleasure. How can people connect with you? They want to reach out for any.
yeah. I am on LinkedIn,
Sure.
so you can check me out there, and then you can send me a request
Okay.
through that
So
page.
it's Sonny,
Sonny
SONNY,
NY
and
Chadha CHADHA,
fantastic.
based in Sydney. Yep.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for your time, Sonny. It's been a
Thank you,
pleasure.
Ronnie. Appreciate it very much.
Go